rise, my friend.
What in the wide world of sports is going on here?
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
You are listening to The Review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a surprise bonus episode of the OSG Sports College Football Podcast, The Review. That show is featuring us, the online sports guys, who you see here in the boxes. Brother Marty here on my lower right.
I'm doing my Winhurst.
Brother John on my lower left. Brother J-Dub right next to me here on my left. Probably not your left, because I'm not really sure how this is going to look once I start editing it. But I'll worry about it when we get to that point.
On your left. Why would he be on your left? And not
Why not?
On your left.
Left turn, Clyde.
Bang. There you go. All right.
What is this, NASCAR?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yes, it is. It's NASCAR. Are you ready to talk, y'all?
Yes. Yeah, we'll talk.
Boogity.
Yep, let's go racing, boys. All right, hit it.
The reason we have convened here is because we've had a few things change in the world of college football here this summer. That impetus kind of being the announcement just a couple of weeks ago that both USC and UCLA will be leaving the Pac-12 to go to the Big Ten, which will now be the Big Ten / I guess 16.
12, 14, 16, sure. To be more,
or
yeah.
at least until they add some more teams, because I can't imagine that they're going to just leave those two isolated West Coast teams all by their little lonesomes out there in California. Guys, we talked before when Oklahoma and Texas decided they were going to abandon the Big 12 and move to the SEC. But for me, this feels a little bit more like we're really at the beginning of the end of college football as we've known it over the past 100 or so years. And I don't think the game's going to be the same at probably 2 years from now. Do you agree with this, and why?
It's a full-on arms race.
Yeah.
Like at that point, as soon as Texas and OU jumped, there's kind of no choice but to expand or be one of the ones that gets cut apart.
I think that was the impetus when Texas and OU jumped. Then Cincinnati and Houston, they're like, what's going on? And then I just from a logistical standpoint, with USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten, can you imagine the traveling to Rutgers?
Could you imagine non-revenue sports
to
travel?
Yeah.
Here's the guy I feel sorry for. The guy that's driving that 18-wheeler filled with football equipment that's going to have to drive from Maryland literally on the coast all the way across the country. He's going to have to leave on Monday.
And and I don't know if that was the first thing that should have popped in my head, but I mean, you look at Texas and OU, that those travels are fine, but going from freaking LA to the Scarlet Knights, I'm like, that's just that travel alone, even for football, is fine. But like John said, with non-revenue sports, I don't that move. It's the reasoning it happened has got to be the death knell for
security alarm.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the death knell for conferences as we know it. I think that this is the first step towards this. Texas and OU was one thing, but UCLA, USC smells of something completely different to me.
And I'm honestly looking at 20-team conferences.
Oh, at least.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you think about it. Let's just say what you end up with in a football sense. If you have 20-team conferences, you end up with 2 divisions of 10. Then you end up with 9 division games, 1 crossover rival, and 2 money games. Homecoming, and then whatever the preseason kickoff classic that you want to do, if with a 12-game schedule that we look at. And so that was why for me 20 seemed to.
Hey, look who popped up.
Hey, woohoo!
Hi, Brother Wilkie.
Look at the naturist.
But no, I mean, I think for me, I'm looking at 20 as my magic number, and Wilkie, as we're talking here about the galactic realignment and USC and UCLA being the catalysts now as a part of the Big 10, 12, 14, 16. I was looking
20.
18, 20.
Just plain old big.
Yeah, I ultimately was looking at 20 divide into tens, and then that way you've got 9 conference games in a football sense, 1 crossover to the other division, and 2 money games. So I'm looking at 20 as the magic number now.
As far as people in the leagues?
Yeah, right now.
Yeah, and who you targeting? Who are the more attractive schools that is not only going to bring more to your conference, but can fill the seats, can compete, and what TV markets do they deliver? And I think that's what is going to be the telltale sign, is what TV markets you can deliver when they're out looking to expand.
Yeah, but what do you do? And if you're going by TV markets and bringing in viewers, which is clearly what most of this is about, what happens if you're in Oregon, who's a major player in college football, but in a small little dinky town that really doesn't bring that big, massive TV audience?
Oh, but you bring Nike as a sponsor. That's
great. And here's the other thing. TV markets don't matter because it's all going to be on streaming.
Yep.
True.
Alumni base is all that matters.
Yeah, and they've got a big one. I mean, I can't imagine that with USC and UCLA disappearing and going Big Ten, that Washington and Oregon, which I think are the two big name West Coast schools that are still sitting out there that are not part of one of those power conferences. It leaves the Pac-12 as kind of the Mountain West without those two.
But you brought up the Nike aspect of it too, and Washington does deliver the Seattle market, which is a top 20 market.
Yes.
So I understand the streaming aspect of it all, but still, TV markets still matter to these conference commissioners and to these television execs. So that to me is going to be the first target when they're looking to bring people in, and also your alumni base and how much does your athletic department budget. And I think those are all factors. There's probably factors involved that you and I, the 5 of us, can't even think about right now because they're kind of beyond what we think about in college athletics.
But I can't imagine if the Huskies skip town and go to a different conference. I can't imagine the Apple Cup being a non-conference game.
Yeah, it's tough.
All of these galactic jumps are killing these long-time rivalry games that like John was talking about having one cross-division rivalry. You got some people like the ACC who've got, hundreds of years worth of rivalries that'll be relegated to a non-con or I think
every once in a while.
Yeah. It's like, to me, that kind of kills the fun and the competitive nature of college football to me.
And that's kind of the point here. I mean, do rivalries matter that much when you're doubling your TV revenue intake on a yearly basis? When you're going and adding an extra $50 million a year, does your rivalry game really matter that much?
Well, I can tell you to a player it did.
Playing USC.
But playing a rivalry game as a player is one thing. But if you're playing a whole bunch of non-con road games with new people, it doesn't feel the same way. But if you're walking into the third Saturday in October and you're a member of the Tennessee Volunteer family and you're playing the Alabama Crimson Tide, that game matters versus playing Central Florida.
Marty, go ahead.
I was saying give credit to USC for bringing UCLA because UCLA they weren't exactly doing well before this, and that Big Ten contract is going to help keep them afloat. They were talking about losing some of their Olympic sports just because they couldn't keep them afloat.
Well, I think this is where
are you going to see more teams coming in pairs to maintain their rivalry if they're going to jump conference?
Yeah, Marty, that's what's going to happen. There's a reason why Oklahoma and Texas paired up and went to the SEC to keep the Red River Shootout going. UCLA, USC. I mean, that is the top college football rivalry in the West Coast. But that's one thing that I think the SEC has done well as far as realignment and bringing new teams in, is to keep those long-standing rivalries intact and mattering. And I think the Big Ten is doing a good job with that too. The Big Ten's cornered the market in trophy games, and they want to keep that intact. So I think those two conferences have done a good job in keeping those things. And I agree with you, J-Dub, rivalries do matter. I went to a school that really didn't have a rival. And you're playing a lower mid-major, and it's just not, or another 1AA school that has no street cred, and it's just not the same.
Well, speaking of that, do you think, that story that came out this week about SEC looking at like Florida State, UNC, Miami, Clemson? What's the probability of that happening? Because if you lose those 4 from the ACC and they go to the SEC, talking about a super conference, Jiminy Christmas.
That's where we're heading, though. The big fish are starting to swallow the smaller fish up really fast.
Don't care.
No, I think there's some credibility to that, J-Dub. I really do. Yeah. I think those people in the conference office in Greensboro don't know what to do right now. So I think it's very much credible that those things could happen. I think the ACC is the perfect conference to poach because they do have programs that have large fan bases, and where football matters in some schools. So I can see that happening in the next few months to next year or two. I think the ACC is extremely vulnerable and is going to be poached pretty hard between now and then.
Yeah, it's a race between the Big 12 and the ACC to pick the corpse over and because whichever one doesn't add is going to get pulled from.
And if the Big 12's smart, they wouldn't merge with the Pac-12. They'd merge with the ACC when all that happens. And it's a better fit.
Yeah, which would be the end of the Pac-12, though, as we know it.
Again, who cares?
But once again,
this time, Big Killing Pot is bringing East to West together.
Yeah. And what you're seeing is the conferences whose front offices, and I mean the conference, literally the conference, capital T, capital C, the conference offices that are being proactive versus being reactive. And the Pac-12 is being reactive, and the ACC is being reactive.
Yeah. Well,
this happens in these situations.
With the ACC, to me, that's that's what happens when you have someone like Jim Phillips taking over. John Swofford would not have let this happen. He would have been very proactive. He's a football guy. Yeah. And his goal was to elevate ACC football to the level of the SEC and the Big Ten. And for about a couple of years, he did that. And then the decline happened and he moved on. Jim Phillips takes over. And when the ACC had a chance to vote on expansion of the playoff, which I think would have benefited them greatly, they punted and tabled the issue. So that to me shows me a change of philosophy in that league and the difference between Jim Phillips and John Swofford. I don't think the ACC would be in this precarious position if Swofford was still there.
Yeah, Wilkie brings up a good point here. If you look at the discussion that the College Football Playoff Committee had last year about expanding to 12 teams for the playoff, the teams that kind of said, no, we don't want to do that because it's going to help you, not us, are the ones that are getting picked over right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pac-12 and the ACC were the big pushers who said, don't do this. And now they're getting left in the dust.
Yeah. And it's hurting them.
Cut their own throats.
Do you think that this is going to force Notre Dame to make a decision football wise? Do you think that they're going to, because if you look at it, if Carolina, Clemson, these guys might, Florida State head out, there's a big core of your football functionality. You'll have NC State, Miami, some, maybe Virginia Tech, maybe not. I mean, maybe Boston College, but the big football guys will be gone. Duke will be there, obviously, for basketball purposes. But do you think if this happens, Notre Dame's sitting there going, you know what? I don't necessarily want to be in this conference anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Notre Dame's arrogance is going to stop them from joining a conference until everybody circles the wagons and stops scheduling.
You think?
They've been arrogant about this since 1899. That was the first time the Big Ten asked them to join. 3 schools were asked to join. Notre Dame decided not to send a delegation. Every other school that petitioned joined except for Notre Dame because they couldn't be bothered to send a delegation there. They filled out and said that should be enough. Let us join. And then they've been on a standoff with the Big Ten since then. They take great pride, like growing up in an area where there's a lot of Notre Dame fans. The arrogance they have about being an independent is going to stop them from joining. That's part of their DNA at this point.
And I think if they do join a conference in football, it would be the SEC, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because of what you said, Marty. I mean, the Big Ten has been sniffing up that tail for a long time, and they've resisted. And what I understand is there's been an open invitation for Notre Dame to join anytime they feel free to do it. And to me, if they're going to join a super conference, it's the SEC. And I think it would be a better fit because how many guys on that roster are from Florida and Texas and from the Southeast? I mean,
It'll
they
definitely bring the GPA up for down then.
Yeah,
exactly.
But it doesn't quite fit the Southern footprint that the SEC is so proud of.
No, it does not. And that's the only kind of curveball there. And it's an
I think we're beyond that, guys.
So you're flying to
Yeah, but look at all the teams there. Every team that's rumored to be, pulling in is south of the Mason-Dixon line.
Yep.
I agree, but there's that the Golden Dome right there that they could add to their portfolio.
Yeah, let me ask you guys this. Are we heading to a world where you're looking at basically 2 premier leagues, with the SEC having their southern footprint and the Atlantic Coast footprint in a deal with ESPN, and the Big Ten with their east-west connection and the Midwest on Fox Sports, and that's going to be what major top-level college football is here within the next. Really?
Sure, you have the ESPN conference and the Fox conference. Come on,
they're going to punt they're going to punt the NCAA downtown.
Yep.
Well, the NCAA has almost no say-so in any of this.
They talk about cutting your own throat. They had a perfect opportunity to show that they're actually worth something when COVID started, and they did exactly nothing. Every single conference did whatever they wanted.
Yep.
So they didn't care. They didn't do anything for player safety. They did nothing for the small schools. They did nothing for the big schools. So they didn't care about anybody equally, at least.
Yeah.
At least they weren't differentiating, but they're worthless.
This Premier League conversation, John Nelson, didn't you and Twitter D'Anthony and I have this conversation like 5-6 years ago?
Yeah, I think so. Well,
Talk about ahead of the curve.
Well, that's part of the deal here. Marty mentions the NCAA. I'm sure the NCAA will clutch their pearls and gnash their teeth and finally sit there and have some kind of finalized opinion in 2037 at this pacing. But J-Dub, you look at the ESPN conference and the Fox conference, and I think legitimately that's where we are. You have the 2 big players in college football with their marquee properties, and the fact that ESPN renewed with the SEC and has them long-term and pulled the Saturday contract away from CBS gives them that marquee property. And Fox, we know they blow it up with their noon kick, and then whatever they want to do with whatever other properties they have. They're on the Pac-12 on FS1 and FS2 late night or whatever. But J-Dub, you're looking at the 2 big dogs, 1 carrier, 2 carriers, 2 conferences, and then everybody else is sitting there trying to claw their way and figure out what they want to do.
But you also look at this, is that what I'm seeing is if you have these major super conferences in that way, they're gonna have their own playoff structures. And then maybe like the SEC super conference and the Big Ten super conference. No, what I'm saying is have their own national championship game, not under NCAA, and like completely bypass it.
Isn't under the purview of the NCAA. It's its own entity.
Yeah, but I think what J-Dub's talking about is only the Big Ten and the SEC will play for the major college championship.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
And what you're going to see is some kind of playoff structure where when you're, let's say the SEC breaks up into 4 divisions. Okay, so division champions play in a quote conference semifinal, then they play a conference final, and then maybe the winner goes on to the championship game of the what are we going to call this? The Intergalactic College Football
Yeah, the
Championship,
Super
or
League,
So, I mean-
whatever.
And that's what I was
Right
trying
there,
to say. Is like,
right there's the NFL
Soccer,
model.
Phil.
Yep.
Yeah. I was going to say that didn't go well with soccer, Phil. You're going to have to call it something other than the Super League.
yeah, but what I'm saying is that it's not going to be a true national championship. It's going to be the super conferences, and everyone else is going to be
Yeah.
left out. And so you have people like the Big 10, and presumably like the Big 12 and the ACC, trying to do something on their own because they're not going to have that. And one thing, I think Marty brought it up earlier, the streaming. You have all these super conferences having their own streaming network. Like right now it's the Big 10 network and the ACC network. I think ESPN and Fox are going to be. I won't necessarily say rendered neutral or rendered useless because that money's still going to be there. You got to still have the TV rights, those types of things. But I think the super conference streaming structures, the pay for subscription, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think the streaming rights for these super conferences are going to be hella lucrative, even over some of these TV contracts.
But they already have it. ESPN has their own streaming network, and so does Fox.
What I'm saying is the super conferences don't. I'm saying it's going to be more so than ESPN. It's going to be more so than Fox, just because of these massive pulls from these schools coming in together. Like like I said, people pulling in their own bases into the streaming platforms. I think it's just going to be a different monster that I don't think any of us here can really predict what that's going to look like.
Right. Between
Let's see.
Fox and ESPN, Fox is the only one that actually goes over the air that somebody could actually receive without having internet or 10 different streaming services to make sure they get each game.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that if you want to watch each game and pay the $5 a month or whatever. But I think the lucrative part of this is the free over the air, because that is still a very valuable commodity with football because it still commands big audiences. And I think Fox and ESPN are going to offer more games on ABC and on Big Fox. And those will make a lot of money for advertisers. It's a great way for universities to market their university in front of a large audience. Yep. So I do think the streaming aspect is going to be a nice secondary part of it, but the real money is on the free over the air, because we have all this technology, but it's easy to turn on your TV and turn to channel 5 or channel 46 and see a game.
And if you're tailgating,
exactly,
also watching games.
Yep. Also the radio feeds.
What I can't believe that nobody's doing yet is, every single channel that you get over the air has at least 3 or 4 sub channels. How is like ABC and Fox not putting secondary games on those other tiered channels?
They don't have it at the network. Well, they do have it at the network level, but the local affiliates have that ability to do that with their sub channels. But the local affiliates don't do those kind of broadcasts. They don't have the resources to do them.
It's simple. You route a secondary feed right down to 8.2 if you're FAA here, and it's more money than an infomercial.
I wonder if the super conferences could help some of the local affiliates in that way and like give them some of the and help, because like I said, WRAL here in Raleigh's got 4 sub channels.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And why not? And if like on channel 5-3, here's Coastal Carolina and Middle Tennessee State.
Well, right? and we're seeing it in the national championship games and in the CFP already right now with the 4-letter with their multicast. And they are literally niching each and every channel that's available to them in their network. It's like, okay, here's the game feed with all 22. Here's game feed with home audio. Here's game feed with away audio. Here's Spider Cam. Here's your stat channel. All these kinds
of coaches thing.
Coaches film room. So there are a lot of different things I think that they could do to monetize it. And I think that if you build it from the intergalactic championship game / intergalactic championship series and work your way backward into the regular season. I think that might be the way to build it with what you're doing right now, and then figure out a way to just work it backwards. Start, and then you work back to the semifinals. Then you go back to the opening round. Then you go back into the regular season. I think it's something that's built backward instead of forward.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our Twitter page at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever's on your mind about college football.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
It may not require a textbook, but it's filled with valuable lessons. It may not take place in a classroom, but it's an ideal environment for learning. It may not involve a diploma, but it can help prepare Georgia's young people for life. It's high school sports. High school sports can play a critical role in a student's overall education. In fact, studies show that students that participate in high school sports are more likely to enjoy greater levels of achievement in their academic lives. If you think high school sports are only about competition, think again. Better yet, think about attending a high school sporting event in your community. You'll be amazed by what you see. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Dogs and cats living together, that's carrion.
Going back to what we were talking about the two major conferences splitting off, are we going to see it go to a world where we have the two super conferences and then we have what I guess would be a version of 1AA football where you have the Sun Belts and the AACs and I guess now really the Big 12 and the Pac-12?
Let them have their own championship, and you can monetize the hell out of that too, with whatever rights holder wants to do it.
Yep. Is that what we're looking at here, though, in the next couple of years, that's going to splinter off that way, and then we're just going to have a couple of graduated levels down as we go?
That's kind of what I was trying to say earlier, but I didn't put it together in as eloquently as John just did. But I think that's where we're headed, and I think that's why some the conferences that are trying to either like add more or to save their teams, like the ACC, I think that they're going to be falling into those lower tiers.
And how do you guys think a world where college football and everybody's no longer treated equally?
How has anybody been treated equally?
Yeah,
but I mean,
what's new? That's what I think.
Yeah,
I mean, for all the traditionalists who say, well, Auburn playing Tennessee or Auburn playing Georgia Tech or whomever is part of major college football experience, and that game's not going to. Those type of games won't exist in this new world.
Nope.
I have to say this. I have to get it off my plate because
Here we go.
Brought me. But this is not a conference realignment, like a galactic realignment thing. This is an internal thing in the ACC. Wake Forest is a part of the Tobacco Road history. When you realign the primary competitors and you give Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, and Duke. One of the oldest rivalries in the ACC is Wake Forest NC State, and it's not a rivalry game in conference. Come on, ACC. Sorry, I'm done.
But what happens if
influence of Jim Phillips right there?
Using your example, what happens if NC State goes to one of the super conferences and Wake Forest is left behind? All of a sudden, there's no way for the two of them to play.
Again, that's why the original question we talked about, do rivalries matter? Yes, they matter, but money is more important nowadays. And I think that's what's going to supersede it. But as a player, that rivalry game mattered. Like if I'm in the Red River Shootout, if I'm in the Sunflower Showdown, if I'm in the third Saturday in October, that game matters. Yeah. Conference, non-conference, it doesn't matter, but it just matters differently. It feels different.
Your rivalry, J-Dub, got bought out. Bottom line.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And it drives me crazy, Jim Phillips. What are you doing?
See, Marty gets, I think Marty's rivalries might be the only ones that are preserved. I mean, as TOSU continues to chase after every important article in grammar and tries to make sure that it's their own.
Preposition you.
Legitimately, I think that Marty's rivalries get preserved in this. I think J-Dubs go away. I think Wilkie and mine probably get splintered. And I think the only one of the five of us that gets everything preserved at the end of the day, Marty, is you. You get the
happy with that.
rivalry. You get the rivalries.
It did start with a border skirmish.
Well, hey, as a guy
Unfortunately, they were fighting over Toledo.
But,
wow.
That's
really worth
That's how far back it goes.
There's
dispute on the line.
As a guy who grew up watching the Arkansas Razorbacks, I'm getting the Texas rivalry back.
There you are.
So I'm okay with that. And now we're going to start a series with Oklahoma. I mean, which has been begged to do since I was born.
Does Arkansas really want Texas? They lost to North Texas.
Oh,
yeah, but Sam
my
Pittman's
former
now
employer.
their coach.
Now I can understand keeping Duke in that particular realignment because here in Tobacco Road country, Duke is a little Harvard, Wake Forest is a little Yale, so I can understand keeping that rivalry. But I mean, come on! Everyone we split into the coastal, the different divisions, Atlantic. I was like, the rivalries kind of went to pot. And then as someone who was a Kansas fan, we don't have any rivalries. We're basically the person they schedule for homecoming.
You're homecoming, yeah, exactly.
Till basketball season.
That is true.
No.
Yeah, technically
You let
it was
Missouri get
Kansas
away.
State, but that would be it.
But Wake Forest got galactically screwed in this realignment, in my personal opinion.
You're not worth it financially. Therefore, you're going to get put to the back of the line.
Well, what I find interesting about that scenario, J-Dub, is, all right, you're saying Carolina might be going to the SEC. ESPN is going to allow the Carolina-Duke men's basketball rivalry to break up?
Sure they will. Why wouldn't they? If they can make...
Is this what happens when Hubert Davis and John Shire are the head coaches?
Yes.
Yeah.
If they can make $50 million extra dollars off of a football game as opposed to $5 million off the basketball game, hell yeah, they will.
And here's what happens. It goes back to the beginning of the conversation. With the other sports that we're not talking about that are in season, those openings for those at-large games that are in your schedule, those non-conference games, they're now turned into events. North Carolina Duke for basketball will be one of those out-of-conference mega games that will get blown up because they're coming from two separate places. You can't have them together football-wise because financially it doesn't work. In a basketball sense, it will work under a different scenario.
You've got five times as many games to get that to squeeze in.
Just saying the sentence that North Carolina and Duke would be not conference mates. That just blows my mind.
But that's the whole reason we're having this conversation, because I think college football as we know it is about to cease to exist.
Yep.
But financially, it drives the bus, Marty. It really does.
Imagine being a basketball coach because all these decisions have exactly nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking about earlier about all the different places that bowl games and things are put on the air. It's like, I know this is a basketball point, but when, with March Madness on the air, you had like 25 different sub-tier cable networks that had games on TBS, TNT, all those guys. And, I think it not only kills college football as we know it, but it also kills March Madness as we know it. I think March Madness is a little bit easier to deal with because they're coming from 64 different places. But I think the revenue and NIL and the transfer portal and all this other crap, athletics as we know it, as we grew up with, are done.
Oh,
I think as we go forward, we're going to have to live with some semblance of the athletic structure, because NIL and transfer portal themselves, we said that in the course of the year that ended college football as we know it. now with this galactic realignment, who knows where we're going to end up?
Transfer portal more so than NIL, because NIL just
Yeah.
stands for now it's legal. Stuff's been going on forever.
Yeah.
True. Yep.
I'm not a businessman. I'm a business man.
That is true. I mean, think about it this way. Are we talking about essentially making the top level of college football a professional sport?
It is.
It
Per
is.
se, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It's generating that kind of money.
Yeah, it's a business.
And I'm just wondering how long, what attracted us to college football?
The history, the pomp, and the circumstance.
Exactly.
Rivalries.
And I wonder how long that'll still be going. And when those rivalries go away, what's going to be the attraction to the new generation of fans? I
Yeah.
mean, Razorback football was handed down generations in my family, and will that continue?
New
If it kept
rival-
becoming more professionalized, and one thing I thought about too were the ticket prices, because as soon as we go to this professional model, I think you're going to start charging ticket prices comparable to the NFL. And can a blue collar family in a rural SEC fan base, can they continue to afford those season tickets? That's something that I've thought of throughout this whole thing when the news broke. If you're going to be more like the NFL, are you going to start charging the NFL?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's going to price people out.
It's a legit question, but you think about it too. Most of the bigger schools that sell out or nearly sell out their games, you have to be a certain level of an alumni donator to even get those seasons tickets.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing I got actually to this is talking about ticket prices and NIL, that kind of thing. I got into a big discussion up here with one of my buddies. At what point in time do amateur athletes forfeit their amateur status with getting all of these NIL basically getting paid to be an athlete? At what point in time do you forfeit that amateur status?
It's such a gray area right now.
Yeah. Arguably, they already have.
That was the point we were talking about. Like for Olympic sports and that type of thing. Are they not?
That line's gone in the Olympics as well.
Yeah, the only
Yeah.
teams that are going to benefit from all those prices going nuts are the smaller teams like North Texas. I went to a 1AA school, Youngstown State. All of a sudden, they're the affordable option if you want to take your kid to a game and actually be able to buy something to eat.
Yeah,
get
same
a
for
ticket
me
to
with
the game.
Same for me as a Georgia Southern graduate. I mean, we don't really even enter into the conversation here with all these big, gigantic programs and all this big money stuff. We're playing the Sun Belt. We're a mid-level Sun Belt team.
I mean, look, right now, the way things are, the only difference in saying what a PSL is in the college game is the donation to the school. Instead of being a PSL, it is a donation to the school in whatever form it is, and the level of your donation dictates where your seats are on a college level. The language is different. The idea is the same.
Absolutely.
And that's where the ticket revenues come. Although I don't know that the ticket revenue is that important in a world where you're getting the payouts that they get. I mean, the conferences, we're talking about the next Big Ten contract, which is coming up here for negotiation. There's conversation that's going to be an over $1 billion a year thing just for the big teams that are in the Big Ten, the 16 teams in the Big Ten.
You mean after they just added LA, that pretty much made that a reality.
And you're talking about close to $100 million payout just for the TV deal, not even marketing rights or anything else.
And don't think for a second that the Southeastern Conference isn't looking at that deal, probably with Apple. I think that Apple wanted to get back into this discussion now with the B1G, now that USC and UCLA are working their way in. Don't think for a second that the Southeastern Conference and ESPN aren't going to be having conversations about how this gets renegotiated because of all of the revenue that's going to be generated in addition to the folks that are coming into the conference now. So
that's definitely coming. The NFL just said the other day,
the
Sunday ticket is going to be a streaming service. It's not going to be. I mean, now if you wanted to stream the Sunday ticket, you basically had to sign up for an EDU email address and then go to Sunday ticket and, lie to get it. Not that I would do anything like that.
No. So that's such an ugly term, Marty.
Yeah.
It's not lying.
But it's called working around a problem.
But here's a point. Kind of we talked about a little earlier. When I lived in Atlanta before, and the Braves weren't that great, the joke was you don't have to go to a game at Turner Field because there's 8 different ways to watch or listen to a ball game. Will streaming services, like you said, if PSLs and ticket prices and crazy go through the roof, will that be better for like streaming services? Like I'd rather spend $150 to get a full year of the B1G versus paying $150, $200, $300 a game for a ticket. Then it's like $2,000. At what point in time, do fans just say, peace out, I'll watch it at home?
Yeah. Well, Amazon in Europe, if you want to buy an NFL game, you can just say, here's $6. I want to watch the
a la carte
Browns play the Steelers. A friend of mine was over there and he's like, yeah, I approached the bartender. He's like, oh, you can buy just a single game. He's like, okay, put it on my tab.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
then I think you're killing the in-stadium experience if that happens, and that's what college football is about. You're watching not only for the game, but you're seeing the students, you're seeing the crazy blue-collar fans that we all love in the SEC. And if you're pricing those people out, it's going to be, to me, it's not even going to be as attractive in-game experience, even watching it as an NFL game, because at least in the NFL, you've got those people that'll save their life savings to get those season tickets, and it's a little easier to get.
But they don't need to jack up college football prices right now, because if they're going to get that kind of TV revenue, they're making their money. Yeah. They've already, even now without all of this, they have more money than God that they know how to spend. Yeah. They're looking for reasons to spend the money, excuses to spend the TV money that they're getting.
And they've got Title IX. They've got to comply with Title IX, so that's going to cost money. So that's where the revenue from the tickets and from the luxury boxes and from the concessions all kind of help those sports as well. They want to add as many opportunities as possible for athletics. And so that's where the in-game experience really helps in that. With the TV revenue, you're capped at a certain spot each year. Yeah, it kind of grows, but you're capped at a certain level. Really, it's the in-game experience, the tickets and so forth that continues to grow a little more. That gives them that extra money to fund some of those sports, because we're talking football right now, but these athletic departments have got to be Title IX compliant. There's all sorts of travel costs, especially now that you've got cross-country travel. So how is the USC lacrosse team going to be able to afford their flight to College Park, Maryland? I mean, there's a lot of things there. The athletic departments
guarantee you that some of the first sponsorships across the board, especially in the B1G, are going to be airlines.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And how many neutral site games are we going to see?
We already see a bunch.
I mean, there's always at the beginning, but is Jerry World going to sell every Saturday off to cut the travel distance for everybody, since it's dead square in the middle?
I doubt it.
I mean, think about it.
No, I agree with Marty. I think that's a great idea. Houston too.
Trademark.
You could
copyright. Just give me 5%.
I want in on that too.
If you could have a game,
I second you,
in the B1G, play at Arrowhead as a middle ground. Have a game in the B1G, play at Mile High. Something like that, where you turn it into an event where the capacity of the stadium that you're going into just so happens to be more than either of the stadia that are attached to both of these teams.
But it takes away from the whole purpose of establishing a market, establishing the West Coast market if you do that.
Well,
the game's still broadcast there.
Yeah.
Game, that's all that matters. That's all.
And I'm sure there's a large Ohio State fan base in Denver too. They're everywhere.
And look at it this way: you take some of these rivalry games that are now non-con neutral site games and move them around to different neutral sites, and that way, you not only do you increase, I guess, not say revenue share, you increase market capability. Like someone in KC,
It's market saturation is what you're doing.
Exactly. It's like if I live in KC, I can't go to the whiteout game in Happy Valley, but if for some reason if they move it to a neutral site, maybe I can go see that game. And that market saturation is increased by using the neutral sites. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, at least you could get a hotel. I don't know if you've ever been to Penn State, but
yeah, no, that is
unless you got family living out there, you're
staying in.
You're going to be driving.
Yeah. You're Harrisburg, you're in Pittsburgh, or you are paying through the nose for an Airbnb. Bottom line, going to Happy Valley.
Yep.
I don't know. Going back a little bit to one of the things that we were talking about a little bit earlier. I don't necessarily buy that the TV deal is going to keep people from not going to a game. It hasn't done it in other sports. There was this huge fear for decades that putting a game on TV in a home market was going to keep people from actually showing up in a stadium. And nobody's seen any evidence that that's true.
Does in the opening round.
No, but it's changed schedules, though. Like this year, Ohio State is playing at Penn State, and it's not the whiteout game for the first time, and I don't know how long. Yeah. They're playing at noon because the way people pick their games this year, Fox got it. And for Fox, big noon kickoff.
Yep.
But is that going to keep people from going to the game?
Well, that's why I brought up the Braves joke. That was not true, but there were people saying, "Why go to the game when I can watch it in one of the 10 different ways that Atlanta's showing the ball game?"
Dude, I live in Atlanta, and I'm a huge Braves fan. I can't watch the games. Yep. I don't have cable TV. I have Hulu Live, and they don't have Bally Sports on there, so I can't watch the games unless it's a national game.
That's an ownership issue. That's a Sinclair problem. That is specifically Sinclair.
But yeah, I think you look at the. I started my doctoral program at NC State in August, and I get access to student tickets, right? So I was looking at that, and I can imagine because NC State student section's always been pretty rowdy.
Yeah,
and I think if we lose the in-game experience, I think that would be a crime of incredible mismanagement proportions if schools do things like that, raise ticket prices, parking pass fees, those types of things to price out the general fan. Because I just think that's if you don't have to do it, then don't do it.
I don't think they will
in the stands.
See, I tend to disagree, Phil, because I think college football fans are not corporate fans, and that's what you tend to get in the professional sports. Mm-hmm. Your Braves example, it's a regional team. The Braves are. It's like the Cardinals, and you've got people from South Georgia and Alabama and Tennessee coming down for a weekend to watch the Braves game. College football, yeah, you've got those families that come in for the weekend, see family, take in the ball game. But if the ticket prices are going to be NFL level, some of those families just do not have the wherewithal to be able to go to all the games like they've done in the past. Yeah. And that's what I think is the big difference, Phil, because it's not the corporate crowd that you have in the professional ranks. It's the mom and pops. They belong to that university somehow, where they graduated from, they have a kid that graduated from it. There's a connection there.
And that's what's not going to do it.
No, I believe that you're going to start seeing empty seats at college football games if these prices go up, and if there's accessibility to television. Heck, it's easier to watch the game on TV than it is going to the game when you have to park. And parking at college stadiums is not the easiest thing to do.
Go to a TCU game.
I know what you're talking about.
I still go back to the same thing. But why would they need to jack the prices up to an unreasonable level with all the
money
they've already got coming in? It doesn't change anything. The only thing that changes is the amount of money, the cash flow they're getting from the network.
As Marty said, because they can.
And they've got other things to fund.
Back to
they have the money to fund anything that they want with that TV money.
Yeah, but you look at some of the NBA games, and this goes back to Wilkie's earlier point about atmosphere. Once you start pricing that out, you're not getting the guy that's been drinking since 6 a.m. tailgating all day. You're getting somebody that's going to sit there in khakis and a polo and sit there,
Entertain his
their hands
clients.
folded, and just watch and then check their phone and tweet that they're at the game, but not actually watch the game. It's not going to be loud at all.
Again, I say, why would they do that? What compelling reason do they have to do that except for,
Until
they can
people
do
stop
it.
paying for it, they're going to keep raising it.
That's
Yeah.
a good point. It's unfortunate, but that's a good point. It's like, can you imagine midnight yell at Kyle Field with only like 100 students in the stands?
Yeah, or
I don't see
jump
that
around
happening
at Wisconsin where you
in our
don't feel the stadium
lifetimes.
move.
Or the Virginia Tech Inner Sandman coming in. I mean, that's just with only like 5 people. I mean, there's nothing like being in that stadium, being in Blacksburg and feeling the shake of the whole entire stadium.
Which is why people will continue to come.
Yeah, which is why Marty.
I don't think so. I think you're going to outprice, and then students, they're enticed to come to the games because they hear about the rivalry games. They hear that such and such team's coming in number 5, but if they've got a midweek game against a team that's in middle of the road or toward the bottom,
social event.
Yeah, why are they going to show up? And if they do show up to the game, they're going to stay out in the parking lot and tailgate and watch it streaming.
And then they're going to sell their ticket and then pay
Right.
for next semester's books.
But how is it any different than now?
Prices are lower.
Well, the prices are lower. It's still pretty reasonable.
That's the only difference, is that right now we're before the wave of raising prices.
So if you're going to get season tickets, get them now.
Get them now.
But I just think the college football fan is totally different than the professional sports fan, which is more of a corporate crowd, entertaining clients, that kind of thing. It's more of a ego trip. There's some of that aspect in college athletics, but I know a few universities that have never sold out their luxury boxes, and they're charging $75,000 a year on those. And they thought that revenue was going to come in, but they can't sell it out because it's a different fan base.
And I currently work for Campbell University, Go Fighting Camels, and I know they have a game day experience staff who their job is like, how can we get more people in the stands? Now, granted, Big South, not in this conversation you're talking about here, talking about a sub-tier major, but watching them and listening to their conversations about, okay, we need to have a t-shirt giveaway, or let's just do a 2-for-1 deal, and all of these things they put into practice, and still having trouble packing. Now, granted, it's Bowie's Creek, North Carolina, but if a lot of these schools are going to these game day experience type marketers, are part of the sports information department, spending time trying to figure out how to get people in the stands. And I think that their jobs will be exponentially harder if ticket prices go up, because if I can't afford a ticket, I don't care if it's the best game day experience in the world, I can't afford a ticket. So I think there's got to be that fine line between making money because we can and pricing out the majority of our fan base.
But what I think this does, J-Dub, and I think to your point, I think what this does is that it creates an opportunity for those lower classification events, meaning like we would say is 1 AA, 1 AAA,
FCS,
the FCSers. Yeah. I think for the Go 5, for the FCSers and everyone below, I think what this does is it creates a marketing opportunity for them to be that economical social event, that economical thing in your own community. I think that it creates an opportunity for them, and I think it's an interesting test case, like your Campbell example. How do you capitalize on something where a lot of folks have been outpriced from their normal experience? How do you bring them in under your tent so you can have those folks that get left behind financially and bring them to Bowie's Creek on a Saturday afternoon? Bring them into that game. I think that this is going to be an interesting marketing exercise for the ones left behind about how to stay relevant and draw other folks under your tent. Draw the casual fan that's in your area, under your tent, that doesn't have that normal allegiance, how do you bring them in and make it an experience for them? I think it'll be an interesting marketing opportunity for a lot of the Go Fives and below.
I still think we're putting the cart way, 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 way before the horse when it comes to pricing people out of going to major college football games. And we're talking decades at it. Maybe I'm wrong.
I just paid my bill for the Cotton Bowl tickets, so.
No, for a wedding gift, my niece just got married, and congratulations, Stephanie and Jay. And they're huge NC State fans. Their son's named Carter Russell Johnson. So they, as a wedding present, his sister-in-law gave him NC State tickets as season tickets. He's a huge State fan. And up to this point, he hasn't been able to afford them. He'll go to tailgate at, Carter Finley Stadium and watch the game from a feed in the car, or listen to the radio station, Westwood One or whoever pulled Wolfpack Radio Network. And now for the first time, he actually gets to see a game from inside the stadium. These are the guys. These are the folks you lose if you raise ticket prices, because he already can't get in.
Yeah,
so just an
that's
idea.
around 50% of your fan base too,
especially NC State.
Yeah,
but yeah, you're looking at these everyday Joes, and yeah, we may be a decade ahead of putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah,
but if money drives football, if that's a low hanging fruit for a university to say, hey, look, if you'll pay $200 for a ticket to come to the Whiteout at Happy Valley, guess what? It's going to be $300.
Yeah, you're going to get specialized pricing for certain games.
Yeah, we didn't see USC and UCLA jump into the B1G. We didn't see that. And now that it is on the table, I don't think we're a decade away from anything that we've been discussing here in the show.
No, I don't either.
Yeah, if you don't think these schools look at like stub hubs, like Ohio State, for example, if you're talking about the big, that Notre Dame game, take a look at what those tickets are going for.
Yep.
That's Super Bowl level pricing right there. The following week, they're playing.
And that's why they're not going to have.
When the Tide rolls into Oxford, Mississippi, what do you think those tickets going to be?
I mean, I know it's not the same thing, but
that's part of your season ticket plan too.
Yeah,
yeah, and I think I think that'll make. Now, granted, if it's a basketball example, if North Carolina leaves and UNC Duke is still a game, that's going. I think, in my opinion, that's going to make that ticket price even more steep.
It's an event
because it's an event. You don't get this, anywhere else, and I think that's going to make that even more of. Like the third Saturday in October. I keep going back to Tennessee, Alabama. Nobody cares about that game, but I mean that's going to be a rivalry game that they can get money for. Alabama, Auburn, right? I don't know. Texas Tech. I still think the ACC. This is my personal take. It's not going to happen, but I think the ACC needs to pilfer West Virginia from the Big Ten and make Virginia Tech, West Virginia a conference game again. I don't know. That's just me. As I kill the conversation of the entire room.
That's definitely a good grab.
And that's the thing is that you wonder what we know what the top cannibalization is for intergalactic realignment. You wonder about those individuals like a West Virginia, like those lower level teams that are currently in these big conferences that we're talking about, that may realize that in intergalactic realignment, we are blanked, and maybe we need to go someplace else and try to improve our lot, even if it's in that second tier setup. Would you rather be a big dog in the second tier, or would you rather get beaten up in the first tier? Money will be the driving force in that, and that will probably be the number one indicator in your own decision. But if you're Northwestern, or if you're Indiana, you're going to stick in the B1G because of the money that's coming down the pike.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're not going to.
That's even a better example. Imagine if you're Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Vandy's not going to move. Vandy is not going to move from the SEC because of what's coming.
Yeah.
They're not dumb at Vanderbilt.
Well, same with Missouri. I mean, Missouri could jump to the Big 12, but it's I think they're. I agree that they know what's coming down the pike with the Super Conference.
Too much
Why in the hell would they leave the SEC?
Yeah, too much of a pay.
Only if they were allowed to sell their membership.
Which would be interesting. That is an interesting play. Would somebody put their license on the line and let somebody else in? But obviously the conference themselves would have to sit there and accept that partner. It's like hey, that's an interesting.
You could set up a whole second tournament like NWA style. Loser leaves town.
Yeah,
Loser leaves conference.
Yeah,
match.
Yep.
You get
at Jerry World or out in Los Angeles at that.
It sounds a little bit like we're talking about relegation.
Set up pro.
That's
exactly what you do.
I wouldn't be against that. I'd like to see Youngstown State go up a level. All our rivalries were in the MAC, and they wouldn't let us join the MAC because as a 1AA school, we kept beating them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we faced that at Southern for a long time until we moved up to Division I, and all of a sudden realized, oh crap, we can't beat everybody all the time now.
Shoes on the other foot.
But it's, like I said, this is a conversation that we're just getting started, and I think that as more continues, it's going to be really interesting, especially with you got USC and UCLA started this madness. Where does it go from here?
Yeah, and guys,
I started with Texas, Oklahoma.
That too. Them too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really what triggered the whole thing.
I've heard.
All four of those teams, though, aren't going to be competing for the league they're joining, though. USC's got a chance. Lincoln Riley took all of Oklahoma's recruits, but will they? Once kids out in the West Coast start watching Ohio State games, seeing, oh, hey, I'm a decent receiver. I think I might want to go there.
They already are.
It's the beauty of the portal.
What do you?
They already are doing that, Marty.
True.
What do you think conferences like the American are doing right now? The American or I know they're watching from the outside in, but how worried? I mean, the American fought to be part of the playoff structure. I mean, is the American worried right now? Or is the American let everybody kill each other and then pick the pieces of the bodies that are left?
I'm a Go 5. That's what I'm doing. I literally
Americans doing all right. Conference USA not doing all right.
Yeah, it's almost flatlined.
And that's the thing. If I'm a Go 5 right now, a current Group of 5 conference, what I am concerned about right now is my own. And if I'm smart and I'm the head of one of these Group of 5 conferences, I'm getting together with all of the other Go 5s saying, we have to pool our resources. We've got to have our own second-tier championship. You pair yourself with a network that wants to do it, and you make your money that way. Don't worry about what's going on above you because that's nothing you can control. You were not invited to that party. You've got to have your own party. And if it just so happens that you've got somebody who makes the best punch on the block, and you can draw folks to your party and make sure that the cops don't get called, then you're fine. Let the party on the biggest house on the big side of town, let them have their party. If you're in the condo around the corner and you've got a decent party yourself and you've got access to the pool in the backyard and you've got parking, fine. Carry it that way. Don't worry about it.
What he's saying is take care of yourself and let everybody else worry about themselves.
Take care of yourself. Look out for number one. And if that means that the Fun Belt and the American and the MAC and the Mountain West, you guys create your own. And then that way you're safe. You've got your own thing. Don't worry about what's going on above you. That's not your concern.
I mean, we've been headed this way for a while.
Yeah.
And so the fact that it's happening now shouldn't, I guess, really be that big of a shock. Guys, what do you say we wrap it up? We're kind of winding down on the topic here. We've gone pretty close to an hour. There's so much more to come. I
ain't done.
Don't think any of us think for a second that the changes, teams coming, teams going, are going to stop anytime soon. But we're also, 3 weeks away from the beginning of late summer, early fall practice. Yep. There's going to be plenty to talk about. We're going to have we're going to podcast over the course of this season. It may be in the form of the rivalry show. It may be a form of a single topic each week. We haven't really decided yet, but we wanted to get this one out there for you guys just to kind of hear what we thought. And we wanted to know what you think. Are we right? Are we wrong here? Are we completely out in left field?
Yes.
Or how
Let
right
us
are
know.
we? Or just a little right or a lot of right?
Yeah. Let us
Send
know
in
what
your
you
ideas for topics as well.
Yeah.
Yes. We have a comment section here on the YouTube page. Let us know on our Twitter pages, at OSG Sports, at OSG Phil for me. You've seen it on the screen for everybody what their Twitter handle is, except for maybe Wilkie.
He's still banned. He's still banned from Twitter.
Yeah.
Are you in a Twitter timeout?
Yes, he is.
So
Yeah, for
much
2 years.
Yeah.
We'll be coming back to you here sometime in the next few weeks with the new version of our old podcast. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned to these channels. For OSG Nelson, for OSG J-Dub, for Brother Marty, Brother Wilkie, I am OSG Phil. We are the Online Sports Guys. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon.
Deuces.
Bye.